I'm Dave Kline. I had a pretty traditional corporate career, and about 3.5 years ago, my wife and I decided to step off that hamster wheel. We bought a business. The business got cut in half about 6 weeks after we bought it, and that led to the actual business we run today, where we train managers and leaders from thousands of companies.
I love it.
Also proud parents.
Yeah, good. Got to sprinkle that in there. So I had you prepare a story for today. Where does your story begin?
When you had originally asked me, we were sort of talking about mystical experiences and miracles. And I think the closest that I to miracle would have been actually not me experiencing it, but sort of me being gifted it. So my passed away, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. But if you rewind his clock way back, hard upbringing, tour in the Army, and ultimately sort of very early age alcoholic. And, for better or worse, like most of his siblings were as well. And, there was a moment 2 years before I was born where he just decided like enough was enough. And, 12 steps, AA, got deeply with that. And so sort of unbeknownst to me that this whole thing existed. So about 12 years old, my dad had been going to meetings on the weekend, and I just thought my dad worked weekends. Like, I didn't know any better. It's just dad was going to a meeting, and he's like, "Hey, hop in the car, like, come with me." And I said, "Sure, where are we going?" He's like, "Oh, just come. You're 12." And so we go into this elementary school. It's Sunday. It's kind of weird for a 12-year-old to be in a school on a weekend. Empty halls, dark lights, and he's like, "Yeah, just sit down over here." And there's, this is the 80s, and there's like, I don't know, 20, 22 adults, chain smoking, drinking coffee. I'm like, what is happening? Like, I'm in this old school gymnasium, metal clanging folding chairs, people ripping butts. Sunday. And he walks up to the front and starts talking. And first thing he says is like, I'm alcoholic. And I'm like, what? Yeah, like, what are we talking about right here? And, proceeded to sort of like host the meeting and tell his stories. And I learned a lot about my dad that day that I didn't honestly know existed. It was sort of been a thing he had kept out of our life. And the line, that riding home, I was sort of asking him like, wait, like, tell me about it. And, it would come to be a bigger deal. And he's like, look, the only, I'm not going to be able to give you like a wealthy life. I'm not going to be able to like pay for all your college. But the I can give you is a broken chain. Like, I can break the link in like my grandparents who were alcoholics and my parents and now me. And like, you don't know that exists in your bloodline, but you don't need to have that existing in your life. And I sort of hold that every day of like, what's the chain link I'm going to break for my girls? And then to some degree, that sort of underlies what we do. What I came to find out years later at my dad's funeral, when 150 people showed up at this restaurant, I thought we were hosting 10. It was all these people, and every story after story of like, your dad I called him on Christmas Eve and he came to see me because I was going to take a drink and he kept me from doing it. And, I don't have that same shared experience, but to be able to work with leaders and managers and people who want to just do better by their teams and do better by their families. I try to channel that same thing of like, can I be there for them? Can I help them through whatever it is they're doing? And so I think deep down, like him breaking the chain for us is sort of something I'm trying to pay forward to others.
That's incredible. So the chain is broken. That's good. I feel richly blessed that I was raised really super hyper religious, because I never really drank. It was not really a problem, and we have it in our family. There's definitely alcoholism on all sides, and so that's what a treat that your dad was able to share that with you. I know that Alcoholics Anonymous uses a higher power as one of their foundational tenets, one of the rules, or however they govern. I've actually never been to a meeting. Do you know what they call those?
I'm like less familiar lately. There's obviously the 12 steps, and I do think that one of the steps is embracing that higher power there.
Yeah. So in your own life, what role does a higher power play for you? And especially in regards to like how you make decisions?
Probably the closest for me. It's interesting. I would have said that we were raised like spiritual, but not necessarily religious. It's like my dad was sort of schizophrenic in that way. He'd be the one taking us to church. my parents split up. So we'd be going to a variety of different churches as he was like dating different women. And, you know, it was funny because he would go and then tell me all the things that were wrong with it, but then try to like leave the good spiritual lessons within it. And so I feel like the thing that I walked away with is like, we probably over-index on naming it, even though we sort of know it's there, that there's something bigger than us. There's something we can't explain. It shows up in intuition. It shows up in coincidence. It shows up in flow. And so I think that's probably the closest it plays for me, which is like just trying to listen to like, what is the universe telling me? Like whatever we want to name it. You want to name it God, that's good on you. You want to name it Allah, that's good on you. I just think of it as, you know, whether it's a collective consciousness or the universe, like if I'm paying attention, it's going to open doors for me. It's going to guide me. It might send me on adventures. They might be hard. But oftentimes that's where the best stories are, the best experiences are, the most fruitful relationships are on the other side of hard. So I think that's the role it plays for me. And I can look back in my career, and then especially the last few years running our own business, where it showed up, you know, like I feel like we write so much. I feel like it often shows up as the muse, where sometimes it's just a grind and you're like, I'm going to put the work in, I'm going to write the words, but they're not going to be that great. And then other times that story I just told, I wrote it for the first time on Twitter, maybe 3 years ago, 10 minutes, just kind of remembered it on Father's Day, typed it out, thought nothing of it. It was way out of my lane of what I would normally write about. 20 million impressions on that thing, like famous celebrities chiming in, congressmen, all kinds of people who had that thing in their life. And, you know, I sort of look at that. When we built our first program, I like sold out the class. I'd never written a slide. And I thought, how's this going to come to be? And I don't know, we cranked out the first 120 slides in like 6 hours, sort of just was there. It just showed up. Like the album wrote itself that day. I don't know. It wasn't really like me writing. So I know for us, we just try to pay attention to it.
One of the rules in my life is to over prepare and go with the flow. And it sounds like you had been at least thinking about the class and the slides and the things and the stuff, and you're posting on Twitter. You had like a, you know, like a regular thing that you were doing. And so do you think that it was this like this kind of fundamental preparation and mind set about what you wanted and what you were trying to accomplish that allowed you to get that muse and get into that? Or was it totally just serendipitous, like you weren't very prepared and all of a sudden it just happened and you went with it?
Well, I think the honest answer is the preparation came from 20 years of doing it and making the mistakes and learning those lessons and compounding them into almost like a set of principles or a set of tactics that worked, trying other things, discarding them when they didn't. And so that certainly had set it up. But I do think there's some sort of nudge in the direction of that. It's like when you go for a run and some days you're like, I got it. I can run forever. I can keep a great pace. I could put in 12 miles, even though I set out to do 5. And I think there's other days where you set out and you're like half mile in and you're like, when will this miserable experience end? You're like, I'm the same person. I got the same sleep. I ate the same food. And just like some days you have it, some days you don't. So I think the prep made it possible. And then honestly, that even some of the urgency of having sold it then was like the last piece to fall into place to unlock the creation.
Yeah, you set your own fire under your butt and you built your parachute on the way down, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
So you regularly coach speakers or leaders and business owners. I'm curious, where do you typically start with them when you're coaching them to be better leaders? What's the foundation that you need to start with before you do all the additional executive coaching? What are you trying to uncover first when you talk with the folks that you're coaching?
Yeah, we'll basically start with 2 things. So one is making sure they have a good articulation of where they're trying to go. It's shocking that even, again, we're talking about CEOs, business owners of, 8, 9, 10-figure companies in some cases. You're like, oh, they must have it all mapped out. They're achieving goals at that level. It should be crystal clear. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes it's not for the business, like where they want to take the business, where are they going next? What's winning look like in 12 months and 18 months and 24 months? Or sometimes they have it for the business and they don't have it for themselves. Like, okay, are you sort of at peace with where you are? Like, is everything in harmony? Are you running this business and at home in time to see the soccer games you want to see, or be front row for the theater performance, or find the partner who's going to be with you down the road? And like, is it whole or is it partial? And so we spent some time there just like articulating, well, where do we want to be? Like, Are you happy? If not, where do we want to pivot? But let's know where we're going to go so we can work backwards. And partly that's just important because life's going to throw problems at you. But people tend to make bigger leaps if they go pick the problems, right? So you can drown in a fire hose of things coming at you, or you can say, well, I'm trying to go there. And if I just see 3 key obstacles that I have to get through to get where I want to go. Then the second thing we'll talk a lot about is like, what are they like? You know, and we just did a bit of an inventory mapping. We have to call, we lay out their map. So their mindset, their abilities, their preferences, and their skills. And so we just very quickly, like, so on the mindset, like what mind, you know, off the top of your head, and I'll give them some prompts, but like, what are the mindsets that serve you? And then what are the mindsets that are holding you back from that destination we just laid out? So like an example for me might be, right, we talked about my dad, alcoholism. My parents split up when I was 12. I much was the oldest of my, you know, I have a brother. And so man of the house, 12 years old, that's sort of the identity I assumed. Well, one of the byproducts of that is like, I can figure most stuff out. Like there's a reason we built the business we built. It's just the 2 of us. Like, yeah, I can get in there and figure out websites and figure out marketing and figure out writing and at least 80-20. So I have a real identity tied up in, I'll just figure stuff out myself. Well, when you're leading teams, that's a pretty bad way to delegate. So I have this mind, I have to know that mindset is there, that effectively that's going to constantly show up in my decision-making when it's like, oh, I should empower, you know, Sarah to take this thing on and make sure she knows how to do it. My natural instinct, my mindset's going to be like, I'll do it. I got it. Like, because not that it just said, I think I can do it. It's like, I put pride in that. I put value around that. So having that inventory of where's my mindset's going to show up, my abilities, right? Like those things, I think there's things we can be trained on, like skills. And then I think abilities are, it's sort of like, where are you strong naturally? And it's always sort of served you, right? And so there's going to be sort of like, some people are more creative. Some people are going to be more outspoken. Some people are going to be linear. Some people are going to be hyper logical, but there's just going to be some of these places you've been blessed with. And you've probably have leaned into those naturally. And there's going to be other places where you're like, man, that ability is what is required for this mission. And I don't have it. And so having, again, that inventory, do you want to build it? Do you want to develop that ability? Because abilities take a long time to build. Or do you want to go acquire it? Do you want to have a co-founder? Do you want to hire a COO? Do you want to hire a head of sales that's got complementary abilities? So that's the second piece. We sort of have the destination, then we really do this inventory to be on the same page about like, well, what are you like? How do you think? What do you prefer? You know, are you extroverted? Are you introverted? And then that lets us then do the matching game over the coming weeks, months, years, where we're constantly looking at real business problems and figuring out how to solve them on that journey.
If there was one habit that you could get all of your clients to adopt early on in their career, what would be that habit?
Easy. I wouldn't about it before. I would have you create a decision journal. So effectively, we greatly overestimate how good we are at making decisions. I would say by almost every single one of us. We also are very bad at recognizing where we actually do make good decisions. And so just simply having a book, I was started before college, but like at least when you start your professional career, okay, I'm going to make this decision. And all you have to do is write down like the decision, why you made it. Like what was your, like what went into making that decision? Just like cheap bullet points, could be your logic, could be your data, your evidence. And then what do you expect to happen on the basis of that decision? And then be disciplined enough to come back to it in 6 months, in 12 months, and take an honest assessment of like what actually happened. I see it like a very tangible thing for leaders is hiring people. Every single manager I've ever worked with believe if you ask them, 98% would say they're above average at recruiting, just like drivers, right? We're all above average drivers. Well, math would tell you that at least half of you are below average recruiters, like below average at assessing talent, bringing in the best talent, et cetera. And so one of the ways you can get better much faster is like, okay, I'm hiring Jim. Jim fits the profile I laid out in these 3 ways. I'm making a bet. I think Jim's kind of weak here, but I think Jim's going to be promoted to VP in 18 months and is going to like outperform. Okay. And then what happened? Go in 18 months, you come back and you're like, where's Jim? Well, we fired Jim after 7 months. Well, why'd we fire Jim? And it's like, oh, well, we fired Jim for X. And like, did you see that and think it wasn't important? Did you not see that? Because each of those will teach you where in your overall system of decision-making you messed up, right? Did you miss the data? Did you emphasize the wrong things? Did the world change in some way? And I just think we, again, do, even a few big decisions a month compounded over years. You're just going to get incrementally better. And if I take lessons from investing, where like the best investors in the world maybe are right 60% of the time. So each of us, from 22 to 23 to 24 to 30 to 40 to 50, if you're just getting a little bit better each year, right? You're going to be an elite decision maker relative to everybody else you're competing against in a couple decades.
One of the core subjects that we hit on the show really frequently is decision making, right? A lot of people are bogged down in that, and that's why we talk so much about intuition.
Yeah.
And so, do you think that this process of sharpening the axe of decision making is ultimately what makes you more in tune to be able to intuit, or is it literally just you have gotten better at it, or is there a way of bringing in an outside source, a way you can relax yourself into becoming a better decision maker on the spot outside of this whole data gathering process? I'm curious how you balance those two things between intuition and just literally the hard skills of decision making.
I don't know if they're that separate. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes, I think it was Jeff Bezos, right, who said, if my intuition and the data don't align, I go looking for more data because it's probably wrong. And so to me, what I like about it is the decision journal takes you from it forces you to go from intuition, which I think can be a very strong signal, to then just checking yourself and saying like, okay, I'm having this intuition. That's a decision I want to make. Why? Like, what is it? And you might not get it perfect, but the process of pausing to say why and carve out, I think it's these two factors. I think it's this key ingredient. I think speed here is more important than precision. This is a two-way door, so I'm not going to overthink it because we'll get better data as soon as we take the first step. I can make this decision because I'm going to make it the smallest possible experiment that gives me the data to either like quit it or double down. Just that pause of intuition to then, well, why? I think what you're ultimately doing is you're just you're honing the code base of your intuition over time. Like you're just catching yourself. Versus I think sometimes you can sort of always rely on intuition. And by not doing that compounding, you will probably talk yourself into like, my intuition's really good, because you're going to bias towards the ones you got right and ignore the ones you got wrong. Versus by making it conscious on the rights, you're like, okay, I'm going to double down and do more of that. And when you're conscious of the wrongs, you're going to catch yourself before you're like repeating the patterns that didn't serve you before. So I think, to me, it's like an accelerant of the intuition as opposed to being one mode or the other.
David, where can everyone find you?
The easiest place to find me is Twitter, LinkedIn, D Kline II on Twitter and Dave Kline on LinkedIn. We also have a newsletter called the Management Accelerator. So love to have people check us out. We're just the two of us in this business. So if you reach out, we'll respond.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been the Pulse Ox Podcast. Please, if you found this episode valuable, give us a like on Spotify and share it with a friend.